Hey Adoption Roadmap listeners, it's podcast editor Josie here. Before we get into today's episode, we have something special to share. This episode is part of PodcastThon 2025. PodcastThon is a global initiative uniting podcasters to raise awareness for important causes. It started in 2023 with 300 podcasters and has grown each year, now expanding worldwide. We're so excited to be a part of this movement, using storytelling and community to make a difference. Our chosen charity is the Gift of Adoption Fund, helping unite children with loving families through adoption grants. If you'd like to support, check out the link in our show notes. Now let's get into today's episode.
When you are reading through a grant application, besides some of those factors that you're looking for about the situation and are they home study ready, in what they write, does what they write matter?
Absolutely. Yeah, our grant selection committee, they read all of those profiles. So we send them out prior to the meeting. They dedicate the time to read through all of them, make their notes, ask their questions, submit their votes. So what they write absolutely matters. And all of those members of our grant selection committee understand that behind every one of those applications, there is a real child and a real family and a real need. So they don't take that for granted at all. They're very invested in this process, and families that can share more about the situation of the child and what's brought them to this point, it absolutely helps.
For sure.
It's all about it being compelling. So the more you share about the baby, the medical situation, it makes life easier for the committee when they are indeed sharing. And no family is judged against another family. These are individually looked at and then moved on to the next. So it definitely helps to share more. Sharing is caring in this instance.
Sharing is caring. I love it. Welcome to the Adoption Roadmap Podcast, your go-to guide through the beautiful, complex, and transformative journey of adoption. I'm Rebecca Gruenspan, a single mom through adoption consultant for over a decade, author of the Adoption Roadmap book, and your trusted guide. In each episode, we dive into real experiences, expert insights, and the raw, honest truths that you will need to navigate your journey. Whether you're just beginning, in the thick of it, or well past placement, you'll find support and community here to help you navigate this unique path with confidence and love. Adoption isn't all rainbows and butterflies. It is life-changing and worth every bit of effort. Let's learn, grow, and journey together on the Adoption Roadmap Podcast. Finances are the number one barrier preventing families from adopting. But what if they didn't have to be? Today on the Adoption Roadmap Podcast, we're tackling one of the biggest hurdles in adoption, the cost. Joining us are Brian Murphy, Chief Financial Officer and Chief Operating Officer, and Shaneetra Gross, Chief Administrative Officer from Gift of Adoption Fund, a nonprofit on a mission to provide grants that help complete adoptions of vulnerable children, giving them permanent families and a chance to thrive. Since 1996, Gift of Adoption has awarded over $20 million in grants. $20 million, ensuring that finances aren't the reason a child remains without a home. Brian and Shaneetra both joined Gift of Adoption in 2007 and have spent nearly 2 decades working to make adoption more accessible. But how do these grants actually work? Who qualifies? Can anyone get financial help? And what are the biggest misconceptions when it comes to adoption expenses? Today, we'll dig into all these questions and more, including their exciting new pilot programs focused on relative licensing and young adult adoptions for those aging out of foster care. If adoption feels financially out of reach, or you just want to understand if grants are feasible to help finance your adoption journey, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Hello, Brian and Shaneetra. Welcome. It is so nice to see you guys. I'm going to jump in with the very first question, which is that adoptions can be very expensive, as you know. I assume that in the work you do, you get to see the breakdown of all the fees when someone applies for a grant. So, what are the main factors that you are seeing drive up costs in domestic private adoption specifically? And why do you think these expenses vary so widely? Who wants to take the first stab at that?
I will
Take
take it.
Good
Okay.
afternoon. Thanks for having us.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. We're super excited to be here. So, inflation is affecting the cost of everything, including adoption, as we all know. So, gift of adoption grants are typically funding that last final cost that families have to cover in order to complete their adoptions. And so, items we most frequently cover are travel fees, agency fees, court costs, attorney's fees. What we're looking to do is to kind of help alleviate that financial burden and the impact of those costs that are increasing over time. So what we've done is kind of increased our average grant award amount each year. And so 5 years ago, believe it or not, the average grant award amount was $3,781. And this year, our average grant award amount is $5,000. So every year it increases.
And what do you think are, I mean, do you guys see the breakdown of fees when you get those grant applications?
Absolutely, we definitely do. So inside, when the families complete what we consider an application update, we reach out every month asking for updated information for the committee to review. We will ask for those costs, and there's a breakdown of the adoption costs, attorney's fees, whatever may be involved in it. There's a line item for each one, so we'll see it, and those amounts are increasing over time, really increasing.
Is there a certain line item that you're seeing is increasing more than others? Is it the cost of living as far as birth mom expenses or expectant mom expenses? Is that the highest fee that you're seeing?
We're seeing that as well as some attorney's fees, but the birth mother fees definitely are increasing, and that will depend on her financial situation and living situation will dictate what her needs are, and those things that may not be covered by insurance, if she has that family will have to pay out of pocket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm noticing too that, the cost of adoption has gone up tremendously. Actually, Brian, what would you say from all the grant applications that you get is like the average total fee of an adoption of some of those?
It varies widely depending on the situation, international, domestic, private domestic versus out of foster care. So the cost is definitely going up. I would peg it somewhere closer to 50 now, whereas when we started, it was closer to 25, 30. So it's definitely been climbing up steadily over the years.
Wow. I would actually love to see more that are in the 50s because what I'm seeing, some of them, I'm telling people it's average of 50 to 65 total, and that sometimes I see them in the 80s.
We are seeing them that high too. There are some outliers that are absolutely on that higher end.
It is crazy.
Yes.
So who is eligible for a grant through gift of adoption? And maybe more importantly, who's not eligible?
Yeah, so who's eligible is anyone who has an approved home study if a home study is required for the adoption. So I want to be clear with that. If a home study is required for the adoption, we need to see that home study. They need to have successfully completed that because we rely on the home study from an accredited agency or licensed home study provider to tell us that family is emotionally, physically, financially fit to parent the child they're going to be adopting. So we're not wading into determining who's a fit parent or not. We rely on the adoption professionals who have been highly accredited to make that determination on our behalf. So we need to have a home study if a home study is required. Now, if it's a relative adoption in states that don't require a home study to complete the adoption, we don't require it either. If the court is going to bless that adoption without a home study, that's sufficient for us. But if a home study is required, that's required. So that's the most basic eligibility, home study. Secondarily, if it's a couple, one member of the couple has to be a U.S. citizen. If it's a single parent, that person has to be a U.S. citizen. So that's the most basic requirement: U.S. citizen involved in the adoption and having a accredited home study from a highly vetted adoption provider.
Okay, so is there a monetary eligibility at all?
Sure. So that's the eligibility to apply. And then once the application's in, we take a look at a number of things. So we're looking at financial need. So we're looking to see that there is a gap between what the family has funded of the adoption, what they have available to fund, and what the adoption costs. So it's not a hard and fast rule. We don't have an income ceiling. Another important thing to mention is we don't expect families to drain their retirement, drain their home equity, drain their savings in order to fund the adoption. We realize the adoption is kind of the start, and they have especially if they're adopting a child with complex medical needs, they're going to have a lot of costs to raising their family. So we don't expect a family to start at zero. We want a family to be on strong footing. So we take all of that into account. And so we do look at financial need. They have to show that there is a financial need. There's a gap in what they have and what they need. We look at imminence of the adoption. We look to see that there's a match or a placement or a referral that's been accepted, so that we know we're funding an adoption that's ultimately going to happen. Now, if a family applies early in the process, say they know they're going to have a financial need and they want to get the application in, so they do that right after home study before there's a match, we're not going to turn them down and deny them a grant because it's not imminent. We simply hold it. We continue to reach out to them. We get updates from them. And when the time is right, we bring it before the committee for a decision. So financial need, imminence, and then the other piece we look for is that the family's really been good stewards of the resources they have to show a commitment to the adoption. We want to come alongside families who are committed to making the adoption happen, and they've showed a commitment to funding that adoption either on their own or through other resources. They're doing fundraisers, whatever the case may be, to help close that gap. Our grants are typically about 15 to 20% of the total cost of the adoption, so we want to make sure the family's covering the rest of the adoption. So typically, our grants aren't going to be more than 50%. So just simple math, if it was a $50,000 adoption, our grant might be $10,000, and we would look to see that they have the ability to fund that remaining $40,000.
Okay, what's the highest grant you've given for domestic infant?
Yeah, so our highest grant is $15,000. They range anywhere from $1,000 to $15,000, and as Shaneetra said, the average is $5,000 this year.
Okay, so is there any scenario where a family, like you said, knows that they're going to have a need, but hasn't been matched yet? Is there any scenario that you can give the family any sort of inclination of this looks really good and we're pretty sure that you'll get money, or even, yeah, we can tell you that you'll get $5,000, but you'll have to come back for us to solidify that?
We wait until the match or the referral is in place before presenting it, because ultimately we're a children's charity. So we want to know what child is being helped and what the situation is of the child, the birth mom, whatever the case may be. We want to understand that. So we don't do, as you said, we're not giving them a conditional yes. We just continue to reach out to them. Once that match is in place, we understand. And part of the rationale for that too is their situation can change dramatically. If they're waiting 24 months, they can continue to chip away at that cost.
Yeah. And
so their financial need picture might look differently if it's presented 90 days before the placement versus 24 months before, because they're going to, if we brought it to the committee right away, it might look like the need is too great. They haven't done enough toward the adoption. And it's like, well, how are they going to get there? But if we present it as it's closer, then they're going to have chipped away at that cost. And then the piece that Gift of Adoption could provide is gonna fall into place to help them get over the finish line.
That makes sense. If a family comes to you, and because I'm pretty positive you asked, have you gotten any money anywhere else? And they say, yes, we've gotten $2,500 from another grant somewhere. Does that take them off consideration?
Absolutely not.
No, not at all. We will ask families this information during the application update. Some families will do crowdfunding. All of this is part of kind of helping them with those final costs. So we're partnering alongside other organizations that have provided family with some of the costs. And some of these grants are considered upfront grants. So they'll help families to secure the match, to help them to get other things done. And so Gift of Adoption, we're that final payer, that last payer on the back end as we help that child literally cross the threshold and make it home. So all of these granting organizations do something different while working with the family simultaneously, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Ultimately, we want the child in a safe and permanent situation. So, however the family gets over the all of the funding hurdles, we're indifferent to. We want to see it completely funded, so the child's in a safe situation.
Perfect. And I know before we pressed record here, Shaneetra and I were talking about how some families will go back and adopt up to like 4 more kids or whatever, and they keep coming back. And even though you've gotten one grant, you can get multiple grants for different situations. However, on the flip side, I'm guessing it doesn't guarantee you're going to get a grant, especially if things have changed. But is that pretty much is there a good chance that they'll get a second if they got a first?
I would say there's a good chance because they met all of the criteria
Okay.
for that previous adoption.
Uh-huh.
A lot of times those families are adopting siblings, so that's one of our funding priorities.
Mm-hmm.
So if a family adopted 2 years ago and now they're adopting a sibling of that child, that increases their chances rather than diminishes their chances. We want to make sure those siblings have a chance to be raised in the same family, so that family has greater odds now.
Well, I think that's important to mention because probably there's families thinking, well, they gave me one grant. They're not going to give me another grant. I'm not going to go back. But I'm here to tell you guys, go back. If you've got,
absolutely.
One grant already, that doesn't mean you shouldn't go back if you're adopting again.
Absolutely. And a lot of our grant families will call if they're not sure. They'll reach out to me and kind of call, shoot an email, and I let them know, absolutely. We'll talk about the situation first, just to make sure this is something we can help with. And absolutely, I encourage them to apply and hold their hand through the process like we did the very first time.
Awesome. So take me through the application process. What does that look like? Is there a cost to it? And let's talk about that first, and then I kind of want to know how long it usually takes.
Sure. To answer that last piece, there is a cost to it. We do charge a $50 application fee, and it's kind of like when your kid's applying for college. We want to make sure that we're the right fit for their adoption journey. So we don't want people with $1 million in the bank applying just to see, roll the dice. So we do charge a $50 application fee. We do have a fee waiver. So if that creates a financial hardship for families, on our website they can find a link to request a waiver, and we consider those wholeheartedly. The application process starts at our website. So anybody interested in applying goes to giftofadoption.org, click apply for a grant. There's a quick form there to fill out just to collect some information. That passes on to the application. Everything is done electronically. All of the attachments are uploaded, home study, those types of things that are part of the application packet are uploaded. And then we evaluate that. We reach out if there's any missing information. If there's not a match or a referral, we continue to reach out, get those updates until that takes place. And then we take it to the committee and have them review it and make a determination, yes or no. So we evaluate it against those components we discussed earlier, the financial need, the eminence, those things. And then if it's ready to go to the committee because the placement's near and there is a financial need, then we're really switching and looking at the situation of the child and taking that to the committee to make a determination against our funding priorities and make a decision. So,
Shaneetra, how often does the committee meet, and what happens if it's a baby born?
So the committee meets once a month, and it's usually within the first 7 days of the beginning of the month. That's kind of been the track record for that. And so if families who are already in queue, they've updated their information, they're just waiting for a decision, and they've had, let's say for domestic, a stork drop. We've seen it happen. Families will call me, hey, Shaneetra, we've had this wonderful update. We've taken placement. Baby is here. We have to pay our agency. Can we get an expedited decision? Please let us know. And of course, I'll reach out to the grant selection committee. We'll do a special review so we can give that family an answer right away so they're able to proceed with their adoption without there being any stress. So we understand how things can happen so quickly. And families, I think they appreciate and love Gift of Adoption, where they can call us any time of day. And I literally mean any time of day, get an answer, get help, or get a quick turnaround. I don't think many organizations in our space can do that, but we love to brag that we can, and we try to help everyone who crosses our threshold. So if the committee is doing the normal review period, I'll get an email that gives me all of the decisions, and I reach out and send those wonderful congratulatory emails telling families, congratulations, you've received a grant. And I work with them to get it dispersed as quickly as possible, understanding that timing is key. Families have these huge amount of debt. They're trying to get this paid. They don't want to have to worry about, I have a new baby at home. Plus, I'm worrying and stressing about paying the final bill to their agency or attorney. And so we do it very quickly.
So how quickly is quickly? Are we talking 24 hours, 48 hours?
We can. And we love
You can.
We have, absolutely.
Oh, that's amazing.
We just did one this week. A family called. Shaneetra said we have to get on a plane in 24 hours or 48 hours. Can you get a decision? And we got a decision probably in less than 12 hours.
I was going to say.
End of the day, and we got it done by the morning.
Honestly.
That's amazing. Because I know usually you can't take placement until it's paid for. Although I'm assuming that if you can, do you sometimes let an agency know, hey, they've been approved, can you let them move forward? We're going to be sending you the rest of the money.
Absolutely. I want to say we have great working relationships with all of our outreach partners, agencies, and attorneys. And so we're able to, based on this great relationship, reach out and say, here's the family's grant award letter. Let's not stress the family out anymore. Mm-hmm. They know that gift of adoption. We'll hold on. We'll take care of everything and get it taken care of so the family doesn't have to worry. I think we've proven that year after year after year that they can count on us. And what we say we will do, we do it. So families don't have to stress about it because typically they have to pay those things, or they can't accept placement, or they have to pay before baby is even placed. And that's a hardship for a lot of our families. Yeah. So I don't mind reaching out, making that phone call and advocating for the families. And 100% of the time, our agency partners will indeed wait.
Okay, great. And that kind of brings me to my next question is how the money is paid out. Like, who is it sent to? And mm-hmm. I already alluded, but can you talk a little bit about, where that money goes and
Sure.
how that works?
So after the family receives that wonderful congratulatory email, they start the process of accepting the grant itself. So families will sign off on the acceptance letter. They'll complete an evaluation to tell us more about that precious baby. We'll get pictures, all of that good stuff. And
it's probably the quickest paperwork you ever get back, right?
Honestly, it really is. By the time we've sent this slew of, 50 or 60 emails out, my inbox is flooded with thank you so much, heart emoji. There's tears, there's my phone is ringing off the hook. Families are like, I've applied everywhere and we've been turned down. We started to give up until we had heard from you. So we just love that stuff. So after families will then give us their invoice. That's the most important piece of this puzzle. They've accepted, but then we've accounted for all of those adoption expenses that the families have. We have an invoice from that third party. So attorney, agency, and then we'll work with them and we'll pay that third party directly. So the families do not receive the grant awards, but that agency or attorney does. And so we get it processed. We will state on there it's about 30 days, but honestly, it can be maybe a week at most. And again, if family needs it right away, we can get it done.
Awesome. I think I had one.
If I could just jump in and build on the idea of those quick turnarounds where there's an urgent need. That's why I mentioned earlier, families can apply anytime after the home study, and getting that application in, if they suspect they're going to be applying, just go ahead and get it in. That way, if you get that call, the expectation might have been set that they're going to be taking 2 years before they have placement, and then they get a Stork drop or a baby born, they get a call out of the blue that they can accept this opportunity. Yeah. Having the application already in allows us to move that much quicker, and it takes some of the stress off of that situation too. They're figuring out travel and figuring out all the other components of being able to say yes and move forward with that placement. Having to fill out our application at that point is going to be just stressful. So if they think they're going to be applying, apply early. That way, if you get that call, all they got to do is let Shaneetra know, and we get a few quick facts, and then we're able to make a decision quickly.
Perfect. Do you guys work at all with or have a relationship with your adoption finance coach?
Yes, very close. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she lets her families know about us. We work with all the agencies that they work with, and then we sit on a panel with them once a year with some other grant organizations where they bring all of the families that they're helping coach through the financing of their adoptions to hear more about gift of adoption directly.
Yeah, they're great. We partner with them as well. When you are reading through a grant application, Besides some of those factors that you're looking for about the situation, and are they home study ready, in what they write, does what they write matter?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Talk
our
to me
grant
about
selection
that.
committee, they read all of those profiles. So we send them out prior to the meeting. They dedicate the time to read through all of them, make their notes, ask their questions, submit their votes. So what they write absolutely matters, and all of those members of our grant selection committee understand that behind every one of those applications there is a real child and a real family and a real need. So they don't take that for granted at all. They're very invested in this process, and families that can share more about the situation of the child and what's brought them to this point, it absolutely helps versus not wanting to share. We don't put that out on the internet. We're not going anywhere with that information. It's strictly confidential to the grant selection committee. So sharing that really helps.
Pour your heart out, guys.
Yeah, it really helps us
pull
make
at
our
the
decisions
heartstrings,
because we do get more applications than we have funding to help. So for every two that we say yes to, we're saying no to one.
Yeah.
So sometimes that difference is because a family shared more and we could better understand the situation, and especially around the child, versus a family who maybe said we're not comfortable sharing that. Again, it's confidential to the decision committee. So don't feel shy about, or don't be humble either, as the other piece I would say. Everybody has a story to share, and let us hear yours. It's not the time to say my story is not important or my story is not compelling.
For sure.
It's all about it being compelling. So the more you share about the baby, the medical situation, it makes life easier for the committee when they are indeed sharing. And no family is judged against another family. These are individually looked at and then moved on to the next. So it definitely helps to share more. Sharing is caring in this instance.
Sharing is caring.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. But okay, so you guys go beyond just grants for families who are adopting an infant or even a little bit of an older child privately. You also do international. You have grants for families who are adopting internationally. And you have a couple of other newer programs, which I'd love for you to tell us about. Before we go on, we're going to take a quick break, but don't go away. We still have so much to talk about. Hey there, Adoption Roadmap fam. Are you ready to take the next step on your journey to parenthood? If so, head over to our website and take our quiz. It's called, Are You Ready to Adopt? It's not just about testing your knowledge. It's about making sure you're emotionally and practically prepared for the beautiful, complex journey of adoption. Let's make your dream of parenthood a reality. Go to rgadoptionconsulting.com and take the Are You Ready to Adopt quiz today. That's rgadoptionconsulting.com. The quiz is free, and it will let you know where you are in the process and if you're ready to jump into your adoption journey. But okay, so you guys go beyond just grants for families who are adopting an infant or even a little bit of an older child privately. You also do international. You have grants for families who are adopting internationally. And you have a couple of other newer programs, which I'd love for you to tell us about.
Yeah, we're very excited about these. We just started these last July as pilots, and we're carrying that through this year with the hopes of continuing to build on them and make them permanent offerings. So one of them is for young adults 18 to 21. Our grants used to stop at age 18. We heard from adoption professionals that there's this unfulfilled need for young adults who have aged out of foster care. For whatever reason, maybe they fell through the cracks. Maybe they didn't have a close enough relationship with their foster family yet. They have a lot of trauma, whatever the case may be. They just weren't ready for adoption yet. And now they've passed their 18th birthday. They're not yet 22. And of their own agency, they want to be adopted. We can help with that. So typically in those situations, because they've aged out of foster care, the court costs, the attorney fees, those are not going to be covered any longer. So we can pay those so that adoption can be completed. The other new program is what we call relative licensing grants, and that's for relatives and fictive kin. And whenever I talk about relatives, just for everybody's benefit. When I talk about relative adoption, we're also including fictive kin. So if it's a coach, a nurse, clergy, whatever the case may be, somebody who has a relationship with that child who may not be blood related or adopted related by adoption, that's considered fictive kin. So our relative licensing grants are for families who are adopting out of foster care, and they need to do something to their home in order to pass licensing standards so that they can continue on with adoption. So maybe they need to, the most common thing we're seeing is families who need to move. So grandparents are adopting grandchildren. They're in a 1-bedroom apartment. Now they need to be in a 3-bedroom apartment. So our move grants are helping with the deposit, the first month rent, and literally hiring the moving van and moving guys to get them from point A to point B. The other things we're seeing are renovations. So they need to add a window to a basement and a closet to a basement, so it counts as a bedroom. They need a pool fence, so the yard is considered safe. Maybe one family needed fumigation. One family we're working with needs their electricity updated to be up to code. One we just awarded this week is helping a young man in Louisiana whose roof was damaged from hurricanes, and he's adopting his 2 younger siblings who are currently in separate foster placements. So by getting his roof replaced, he'll be able to be licensed, bring those children into his home, and then be on the path toward adoption. So anything that is required by the caseworker in order to pass licensing that the family is going to have to fund out of pocket on their own, those are fair game for our relative licensing grants. And it also extends to automobiles. So if they need a wheelchair lift in their van because they're adopting a child with mobility issues, we can help with that type of thing too. So vehicles and home renovations, repairs, relocations, replacements, all of that. If it's money that's not covered by other federal or state subsidies or reimbursements, and it's going to come out of the family's pocket, and it's going to allow them to get on the path to completing that adoption and giving that child permanency, we can help with those situations.
So not necessarily for a family who has already adopted a special needs child who then needs, or a child who then needs a wheelchair, let's just say afterwards, they couldn't come to you for that. So this is all pre-adoption.
All pre-adoption, and all of our grants are all pre-adoption.
Got it.
Once finalization occurs, we're not able to help. So we're not in post-adoption services at this point.
Those programs are really cool. How often do the older children who aged out of foster care, how often do you see that happen? I know it's a newer program for you.
It's a newer program. We have 7 that we completed from July through December.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
it's neat to hear their stories and neat to see, how they've come to adoption from not being adopted before 18.
Yeah.
And a lot of those times they had been in several different homes. They didn't quite have that bond with foster mom or foster dad yet. And they just needed time to get there, and now they're there, and they want to have that permanency. And
That's beautiful.
Honored to be a part of that story.
Mm-hmm.
Let's keep going with that. Can one of you share a memorable success story where your grant made a pivotal difference in finalizing a domestic private adoption? Since that's most of my audience are adopting babies, so let's tell a good story with that.
The ones and Shaneetra can jump into, she works more closely with every family. The ones that always move me are those siblings I talked about earlier. So the families, they adopted 2 years ago. They're living life, raising that child, not even thinking about adoption, certainly not saving for adoption. And they get a call out of the blue from their agency saying, birth mom's pregnant. She's due in 6 weeks. Would love to place the child. And they want to be able to do that. So it supports that mom's choice and her agency and what's happening. It keeps the state from getting involved. Maybe in the first case, the state was involved, but now she's aware of what adoption could mean for the child. She makes an adoption plan, and that family, of course, wants to be able to say yes, but they weren't thinking about that. So they can earn a gift of adoption and get assistance to fund that. So broadly speaking, those are ones that I know those make a absolute difference in those families being able to say yes or not.
Absolutely. I would share, we've had a very interesting one recent. We had a family apply for help. There was a mom who had worked in a pizzeria and in her neighborhood, and she moved away. So a good 10 years had gone by, and a friend of hers was pregnant and wanted to place her baby for adoption. And they were having this whole conversation about it. She went home to talk to her husband, and he said, absolutely, let's. And that started their conversation, which she then employed an agency, and that baby was placed, and we had a hand in old friends rekindling after a decade plus. And so that baby is like family, and this is an open adoption, which I find really cool. So it's really cool stories like that where everyone has a relationship. The birth mom is not a stranger to this, they are friends. And so for the birth mom to be able to say, I am very comfortable placing here, I just needed to work out. Family made it happen, and we were able to hold their hand as they jumped over that last financial burden, that hurdle. We were able to close the gap for the family, and they are literally living in bliss right now. So that's probably one of my favorites, because that's something sounds like it's out of a storybook. To know that something like that actually happens. You just walk into a pizzeria one day, like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I love those where it's really helping to honor the birth mother's choice too. Not everybody can afford a private adoption,
Yeah.
obviously, as you know, and if the birth mother has a relationship with somebody who's not able to move forward as easily, having a hand in that and helping them to say yes and honoring that choice is important.
Is it the same process if somebody's adopting a sibling group or a special needs, a more complex situation? Is it the same and the same parameters as far as the amount of grants, or is that any different?
The process is the same.
Okay.
The award amount can vary because we do take the totality of circumstances of their financial picture into account, and understanding that there's going to be more ongoing costs because of the medical needs. The committee takes that into account in determining the amount. So the amount for a grant for if it's 3 children versus 1 child, if it's a child with complex medical needs, those do influence the amount of the grant.
Okay.
But it is nice to share that the process is indeed the same for all, but each family is viewed separately, as each circumstance is so very different, and things change at the drop of a dime as well. So we try to take all of that into consideration when that grant amount is being awarded. And also we have families who will come back after they're in the midst of travel. They've come back and there is still a financial need. They will come back and show us that costs have increased, which is something we talked about earlier that family was not prepared for. They will come back. Some are even in country or in that state, and they can't make it home quite yet. They don't have the funding. They'll call me and we'll have that conversation. We'll get the committee on it. They'll return it right away. Family will sign off, and we'll get those funds to the agency, who will then kind of wire to the family to help them make it back home or cover an Airbnb. So those things happen too, even after the grant's been awarded. We have seen some special occasions where there is additional need for more help, and the families are just in the throes of it. They had no clue that these additional expenses were going to pop up, and we tried to be there for them for that.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So, and I think you said this earlier, Brian, as long as it hasn't finalized yet, there is still an opportunity to receive a grant.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as it's not finalized.
Okay. Awesome. Is there any other piece of advice that you would give to a family? And again, my audience is more that domestic infant, but who might be worried about costs and is thinking about applying to gift of adoption fund. Is there any other considerations or advice that you can give them?
Go ahead, Shaneetra.
I would just say we know that families are facing financial hurdles in completing the adoption. So we encourage you, I implore you to please complete the gift of adoption application. We understand things can take a turn at any given time, and we want to be able to help you as quickly as possible, as we understand that urgency and that stress on the family. We like to eliminate that. We don't want families to they have enough to stress about. We don't want to add on to that. So by you completing that application, when you're in the midst of, I'm not sure I'm matched yet, I'm not sure what I want to do, it's okay. Send it, because guess what? We'll check in with you every month to say, hey, has anything changed? And if something has changed after we've asked, families will call me and say, Shaneetra, I have an update. How can you help me? And I say, don't worry, we've got it. So I would say the best thing you can do for yourself is do that application right away and just keep me posted if something changes outside of the normal part of the process, and I can help. That's not a problem.
Just throw on your cape and you're like,
Yes.
I'm to the rescue.
It's a double cape, Brian and I, and we work, collectively together to make this happen. We love to see the smiles on the family's faces, and they're like extended family for us. So whatever we can do to help, we want to. We love going above and beyond. Really, it's just what we get up and we do the past 18 years, and we love it.
Yeah.
Brian,
And I would
anything
just
to add?
reiterate the share information. Tell us about your situation. Tell us about the child. Tell us what you know about the birth mother and her situation. The more we know, make it difficult for us to make a decision by telling us more.
Now, I know everybody wants you to give a specific number, which I know you can't give, but if you can give me a bit of a range as far as if a family makes X amount, they probably don't need to apply, or if, what's that highest level there?
It's really difficult because we don't have any hard and fast rules around income.
Mm-hmm.
We're really looking, sometimes it's really a cash flow issue that on paper it looks like they're doing all right, but they don't have the runway to save. They don't have 24 months to save that income. They need to come up with that cash in 90 days. And certainly,
so you're not expecting someone to sell their house because they make a lot of money.
We're not expecting someone to sell their house. We're not expecting someone to take out a ton of home equity to drain their 401k.
Right.
We look at their available liquid assets to fund the adoption, and again, we don't expect them to drain all of that either. And we do, to the point earlier about the medical costs and multiple children, we do take that into account as we're evaluating what they have liquid to put toward the adoption. There's also standard of living and cost of living in different, metro areas versus rural areas. So we really try to treat each family, see the uniqueness of each family, and look at the totality of their circumstances and where they are on the timeline of the adoption and making that determination. So, yeah, I got to avoid the question because I can't tell you if you make more than X, don't apply. I think if you can make it. If in applying, you're able to demonstrate that there's a financial need, if you feel really that there's a financial need that you just can't get over the finish line without assistance, then there's a good reason to apply.
And please allow me to share. I will field a lot of phone calls and emails about the income, and I'll get more of the story where I can look at it with the family and say, oh, no, you absolutely can. I would say 98% of the families that apply, they need the help. And there's no question about it. We're talking inflation. We're talking short notice is what gets a lot of our families who will get this influx of applications. They've gone through the process, not understanding or knowing that grants are out there. Some granting organizations will have maybe certain specific things that you must meet. Gift of Adoption doesn't. We're happy to say we're one of the largest organizations that provides grants on a non-discriminatory basis. So we don't care about any of those things. We want to help the families who want a child. That's what we care about at the end of the day. So for us, go ahead and apply, and we're looking at that. So families are saying, oh, I have this amount of income. What about that? And to Brian's point, we don't have that, it's so difficult to answer it. It's more of what's going on right now. What does the time frame look like? Let us review it. And families are often saying, well, we're happy to take that chance. And 9 times out of 10, we're able to help because they don't have the time set aside to save, because they would say, if we had the time, we could. You're right. We wouldn't need the help. We don't have the time. So I have yet to see a family come through that has been automatically said, we can't help them because of that. I have not seen that.
Okay, that's great to know. How much are you planning to give in grants in 2025? We are talking on the brink of March 2025. So,
yeah, we are going to give 641 grants at an average of $5,000, which I believe is $3.2 million this year.
Whoosh!
3.25, I want to say. So yeah,
in all of those areas in total.
In all of those areas in total, yeah.
Fantastic. Is there one that marks up the majority of the grants go to, private infant or international or foster?
Yeah, our split it's about 25% international, 75% domestic, and then within the 75% domestic, there's a good chunk that are, and some of them are touching multiple categories. They may be relatives, they may be siblings, they may be both, they may be medically complex. So they can be in a couple of those buckets. They may be in foster care, at risk of foster care, and that's one of the things we look at too. I don't think we mentioned that yet. if the totality of circumstances suggest a child is at risk of foster care, they're born without a parenting plan, they're drug addicted, mother's incarcerated, whatever the case may be, that suggests that child, if not adopted, is really at risk for state involvement, that's a funding priority for us. So that increases our ability to help. And it's a big chunk of I think 46% of our total grants are those where on the facts and circumstances basis, it looks like that child is at risk of foster care, if not adopted. The best way to get a child out of foster care is to keep them from ever having to go into foster care. So if those situations present themselves, we want to be able to help.
Awesome. Totally makes sense. Listen, I love the work you guys are doing. You are a huge organization making many, many dreams come true, as I hope I am as well in the work that we're doing in RG Adoption Consulting. I remember when I was living in Chicago years and years and years ago, I was at my first fundraising or informational event for Gift of Adoption. I've been to some of your fundraisers at really beautiful, fancy houses, and I've sat on a professional advisory board or group with you guys, and we've actually even had our own fund within RG Adoption Consulting, where we're trying to help some of our families who need help by donating a certain percentage of our income to Gift of Adoption, which we always hope to continue to do when we can. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Is there anything else that we haven't touched upon that you think is really important for people to know?
Well, first, let me say thank you for your continued support, for your involvement over the years, for being part of the Adoption Advisory Council, and certainly the RG Adoption Consulting Fund to help more families. So, appreciate all of that. As far as things we haven't mentioned, I think we've kind of touched on everything. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm not letting you go so quickly because I do have a rapid fire round.
Awesome.
So I'm going to ask each of you these questions.
Okay.
Catch you on your toes a little bit.
All right.
First is a shout out. I'd love for you to give a shout out to one person or organization that has supported the work that you're doing in adoption.
Wow, there's so many. Well, the first person that comes to mind is Lucy Wyka, our co-founder, who's still actively involved in the organization. So she and her husband, Gene, started Gift of Adoption as a private family foundation in '96. And just they saw the need in the world. I think this is the first. They saw the need in the world, started this organization, and soon transferred it from a private family foundation to a public charity because the need was just so overwhelming. And Lucy's still a great friend of the organization, still heavily involved. So that's the first person that comes to mind for me.
Absolutely. I concur with that one. Outside of that, I know you want us to make it one person, but I've got to make it a grouping, which are our chapter board members. I have to shout them out. I mean, they're out here beating the pavement, working hard, fundraising. They're making an impact on these families' lives daily. So I have to shout out our chapter board members, our investor board, our national board. So all things board related at Gift of Adoption, we love them. Our volunteers are integral to our success. So without them, we wouldn't be here today. So I'm going to selfishly shout all of them out.
Love it. What's one piece of advice you would like to share with adoptive parents or hopeful adoptive parents?
Sleep now.
That is a good general parenting advice. And I don't think either of you are adoptive parents, right?
No.
I'm not.
No. But that's okay. I still want to hear what you have to say.
I would say just continue to lead with your heart, as it always leads all of our wonderful grant families. The way that they open their homes and their hearts to children, it's nothing like it. So I just think with that, most of our grant families just continue to do that. It's just everything is heartfelt. And I wouldn't change a thing with that regard. You just lead with your heart.
What's one thing you wish every adoptive parent knew before they brought their child home?
Your life will change forever in a good way. In a good way. Yeah. You're making lifetime memories.
Yeah. It's a lifetime. Yeah, it's just the beginning. It's yeah, it's day one.
Describe adoption in 3 words, Brian.
3 words. This is a hard one. Adoption in 3 words. Child, family, connection.
Shaneetra.
How about joy, perseverance, and financial?
Adoption is not just a destination, it's a journey filled with love, resilience, and growth. Wherever you are on this roadmap, trust in your path, stay open to learning, and always lead with your heart. You already have everything you need to create a beautiful story for your family. And when the road takes unexpected detours, I'm here to help you navigate every turn along the adoption roadmap. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for listening. And if this helped you, please share it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Adoption Roadmap podcast. If you did, I have a few favors to ask of you. First, please hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And while you're at it, I'd love to hear your takeaways. Please write a review and let me know what you liked. And if you have a question or a suggestion on what you'd like to hear, I'd love to hear that too. Please shoot me an email at support@rgadoptionconsulting.com and let me know what you'd like to hear about. And if you have a question, I may just answer it online. Thanks again for listening. Tune in every Wednesday and Friday morning for a brand new episode of the Adoption Roadmap podcast. Until next time, bye-bye.